My mother-in-law looked my crying 9-year-old daughter straight in the eye and said the cruelest words I have ever heard at a child's birthday party. 4 hours later, what she found in her mailbox made the entire neighborhood witness karma in real time. That day, 20 kids watched my daughter's heart break. But by sunset, everyone in town would know exactly what kind of grandmother Beatrice Hartley really was. My name is Victoria, and I need to tell you what happened at my daughter Emma's 9th birthday party last Saturday. Emma is my whole world. A freckle-faced little girl who rescues worms after the rain and shares her lunch with kids who forget theirs. My mother-in-law, Beatrice, is 64, drives a Lincoln Town car, and sits on 3 charity boards. She's the type of woman who donates at galas just to see her name printed on the program, the kind who smiles in family photos while silently ranking everyone around her. And she has a favorite grandchild, my niece Meredith. 11 years old, straight A's, first violin in the youth orchestra, and in Beatrice's eyes, the second coming of Mozart. Meredith gets European vacations. Emma gets discount dolls. I've seen it for years, but this time it wasn't subtle. It was cruel. The day my daughter turned 9, Beatrice used a birthday cake to humiliate her. It all started 3 months earlier, when Emma began counting down the days with a paper chain she made herself. 90 loops of colorful paper, one for every day until her birthday. Each morning, she'd tear one off and say, "Only 7 more days until my rainbow unicorn cake." She drew that cake 50 times, every version with a golden horn and rainbow mane. My husband Dennis and I planned everything carefully. 20 kids from her 3rd grade class, pastel balloons tied to every fence post, twinkling lights between the oak trees, and a hand-painted pin the horn on the unicorn dame I made after work. The highlight of the day was supposed to be the custom cake from Fatelli's, the most expensive bakery downtown. It cost a small fortune, but I took extra shifts at the dental office to make it happen. Dennis had quietly asked if we could afford it, but I said yes, because this was Emma's golden birthday, turning 9 on the 9th, and she deserved magic. Then, 2 weeks before the party, Beatrice called. "I insist on picking up the cake," she said, her tone sharp, leaving no room for argument. "Let me contribute something for my granddaughter." I should have known better. This woman doesn't give without strings attached. She'd already made her favoritism clear for years. At Christmas, Meredith got a cashmere sweater from Nordstrom, while Emma got a clearance Barbie. At recitals, Beatrice brought roses for Meredith and excuses for Emma. "She means well," Dennis always said, trying to defend her. But love doesn't feel like this. The morning of the party, the air was filled with vanilla frosting and laughter. Emma wore her favorite purple dress, the one that shimmered when she spun around. She'd saved her allowance to buy a matching silk headband with a tiny flower. "Do you think Grandma B will like my dress?" she asked, twirling in front of the mirror. My heart clenched. Even at 9, my daughter was still trying to earn her grandmother's love. "You look perfect, sweetheart," I said softly, "like a unicorn princess." She smiled, her eyes glowing, like a unicorn princess. And for a moment, everything was perfect. By noon, the backyard looked like a fairy tale. Kids ran around with party hats, parents chatted over lemonade, and I thought maybe, just maybe, this time things would go smoothly. I was wrong. At 2 o'clock, Beatrice arrived, 45 minutes late. She stepped out of her pristine Lincoln, her coral blouse immaculate, her pearls shining. In her arms, she held a large white bakery box like a trophy. "Traffic was dreadful," she announced, not greeting Emma, who ran toward her, eyes wide with joy. "You really should have picked a bakery closer to civilization, Victoria." I forced a polite smile and took the box from her. "Thank you for picking it up. Emma's been so excited." Can I see it, Mom? Can I see my unicorn? Emma asked, bouncing beside me. Her friends gathered near the sliding glass door, eager to see the famous Fratelli's cake. I lifted the lid carefully and froze. The cake was stunning. Perfect white fondant, a gleaming golden horn, a rainbow mane cascading down the sides. But across the top, written in elegant purple cursive, were the words, "Happy Birthday, Meredith." The kitchen went silent. Emma blinked, confused, then whispered, "That's not my name." I stared at the cake, then at Beatrice. "There must be a mistake," I said, my voice trembling. Beatrice leaned over my shoulder, glanced at the writing, and laughed. Not nervously, not kindly. A real laugh, sharp and cold. "Oh dear, I must have mixed up my granddaughters when I placed the order," she said, shrugging. "Oops, wrong child. But honestly, Meredith deserves a cake more than anyway. She just won first place at the state science fair. What has Emma done lately?" The words hit like a slap. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Two mothers froze mid-sip of punch. Even Dennis, who had been outside setting up the bubble machine, rushed in, his face pale. "But it's my birthday, Grandma B," Emma whispered, her voice trembling. "It's my special day." "Don't be so dramatic," Beatrice said, waving her hand. "It's just a name on a cake. It still tastes the same." "You think Meredith deserves my birthday cake more than me?" Emma asked, her small voice breaking. Beatrice smiled faintly. "Achievements should be celebrated, dear. When you accomplish something noteworthy, then we can make a fuss. Participation ribbons don't count." The silence that followed was suffocating. Emma stood frozen, staring at the cake that told her she wasn't enough. Then she ran, upstairs, her purple dress fluttering behind her like broken wings. The moment Emma's bedroom door slammed, I felt something inside me snap. But not in anger. It was a quiet, precise kind of rage. The kind that doesn't shout or cry. The kind that calculates. Dennis stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, still holding the bubble machine, his face pale and stunned. The parents didn't know where to look. The kids whispered among themselves, confused, their birthday hats tilted, unsure why the birthday girl had vanished. I took a deep breath, steady and slow, and said in a voice so calm it scared even me, "Dennis, please serve the ice cream sundaes to the kids. Tell them Emma will be back soon. I'll handle this." He nodded, his jaw tight, because he knew that tone. It was the voice I used when lines were crossed that could never be uncrossed. Beatrice had already walked outside, acting as though nothing had happened. She sat on a lawn chair, legs crossed, sipping lemonade, chatting with Mrs. Chen about the charity auction, as if she hadn't just shattered a child's heart. She was laughing. Laughing! And that sound, God, that sound, made everything inside me go ice cold. I walked to the far corner of the yard, behind the garden shed, where Emma and I had planted sunflowers last month. It was quiet there. The laughter from the party faded, replaced by the soft hum of bees and the rustle of leaves. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Roger's number. He answered on the second ring, cheerful and oblivious. "Hey, Vic, how's Emma's party going? Sorry we're running late. Meredith's violin teacher." "Roger," I cut him off, my voice flat and steady. "I need you to listen carefully and not interrupt." Okay, what's going on?" "Your mother just deliberately ordered a birthday cake with Meredith's name on it for Emma's party. Then she looked my 9-year-old daughter in the eye and told her Meredith deserved it more because she's accomplished something. Emma is upstairs crying while 20 kids stand in my yard wondering why the birthday girl disappeared." There was silence. Long, thick silence. "She did what?" he finally said, his voice low. "There's more," I continued. "Remember last month when your mother updated her will? She asked me to notarize it, remember? I made copies for her files, and I made copies for myself too, legal copies, including the letter she attached explaining why one granddaughter is more worthy than the other. Victoria, that's private family, not when it involves my daughter. My voice sharpened. In that letter, your mother wrote, and I quote, that Emma is sweet but simple, unlikely to amount to anything significant, while Meredith shows real promise and deserves investment. Those are her exact words. Roger's breathing grew heavier. You shouldn't have copied those documents. I had every legal right as the notary. But that's not what matters right now. What matters is that I have 3 envelopes sitting on my desk. One addressed to Meredith's school, specifically to Mrs. Adamson, the teacher overseeing her student council campaign about kindness and inclusion. The second envelope is for your mother's country club, where she just became board president. And the third is for the human interest editor at the local newspaper, who happens to be my cousin's best friend. Victoria, please, Roger said, his voice rising. This would destroy her reputation. The way she destroyed my daughter's self-worth? I shot back. You tell your mother she has exactly 4 hours to make this right. Not later, not tomorrow, today. What do you want? He asked, his voice trembling. A real apology to Emma, in front of everyone. A new cake from Fatelli's with Emma's name on it. And the education trust fund she set up for Meredith? She creates an identical one for Emma with paperwork signed today. That would cost thousands in legal fees, he said, panicking. Then she better call her lawyer fast, I replied coldly. And Roger, that education trust is funded by the rental income from the Maple Street property, the one your father left. Dennis's name is still on that deed. Your mother never finished the transfer. Legally, we could tie that property up in court for years. There was a pause. Then Roger whispered, This is extortion. No, I said softly. This is a mother protecting her child from emotional abuse. I checked my watch. It's 2:15. She has until 6:15. After that, the envelopes go in the mail. I hung up. My hands weren't shaking. My voice hadn't wavered. I stood there for a long moment, breathing in the scent of the sunflowers, before walking back towards the house. From the kitchen window, I saw Emma sitting on her bed upstairs, hugging her unicorn plushie, her little shoulders shaking as she cried. And in that moment, I promised myself she would never again have to question her worth. Outside, Beatrice was still holding court like nothing had happened, smiling for the neighbors, sipping lemonade. But that smile wouldn't last long. The clock was ticking. At exactly 5:47 that afternoon, 3.5 hours after my phone call to Roger, the sound of screeching tires echoed down our quiet street. Beatrice's Lincoln Town car whicked into our driveway so fast she nearly took out the mailbox. Every parent still lingering from the party looked up, startled. The laughter that had slowly returned during cleanup faded into uneasy silence. Emma sat at the picnic table with her best friend Zoe, making friendship bracelets, her eyes still puffy from crying. She looked up just as the car door opened. Beatrice stepped out, clutching a massive new cake box from Fatelli's bakery, this one twice the size of the first, and 2 glossy shopping bags from Woodland Toys, the expensive shop downtown that sold handcrafted toys from Europe. Her face was flushed, her usually perfect hair slightly disheveled, her coral blouse now stained with what looked like coffee. But behind her, pulling up to the curb, was something no one expected. A white van with Channel 7 News painted in blue across the side. I froze. A camera crew stepped out, followed by a blonde reporter with a bright smile and a microphone in hand. Roger climbed out of the passenger side, his tie crooked, eyes darting nervously around the yard. My stomach twisted as realization hit. He must have told his mother there was going to be a hometown heroes segment about Emma. Maybe he thought it would soften the damage. Maybe he wanted to control the story before I did. Whatever the plan was, it was about to explode spectacularly. Beatrice, ever the performer, smiled wide when she saw the cameras. She straightened her blouse, grabbed the cake and gift bags, and strutted toward the backyard like she was stepping onto a stage. "I'm here to celebrate my amazing granddaughter Emma," she declared loudly enough for everyone to hear. "She deserves the best." The neighbors turned, phones already out. The kids went silent, eyes wide. The reporter approached, microphone extended. "Mrs. Hartley, we understand you wanted to do something special today." "Yes, yes, of course," Beatrice said, flashing her most polished society smile. "Emma is an extraordinary little girl. She volunteers at the animal shelter. She helps our elderly neighbors. She's the kindest, most generous child I know." The lie slid off her tongue so easily it almost sounded true. I saw Emma frown in confusion. She looked up at me as if to ask, "Is Grandma talking about me?" Beatrice continued, her voice rising theatrically. "That's why I'm proud to announce I've created an education fund in her name, $25,000 for her future, because every child deserves to have their dreams supported." The small crowd of parents murmured approvingly. The reporter smiled and turned to Emma. "That's wonderful. Emma, what do you think about your grandmother's generous gift?" Before Emma could speak, the reporter's phone buzzed. She glanced down at the screen, her smile freezing. A pause hung in the air. Then she looked up, her expressions shifting from polite to piercing. "Mrs. Hartley, I'm actually getting word from my producer about some documents that were just delivered to our station. Several, in fact, in your handwriting." Beatrice blinked, confused. "Documents? I don't know what you're—" "They detail your opinions about your granddaughters, including statements about one being sweet but simple and the other worthy of investment. It also mentions an incident today, something about a birthday cake with the wrong name." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The parents shifted, phones rising higher to record. Mrs. Peterson from down the street covered her mouth. Dennis stood behind me, his face pale. Beatrice left nervously. "That's ridiculous! Who would make up such nonsense?" "It appears to be in your handwriting," replied the reporter coolly, "and the letter references your board position at the country club as well as your upcoming charity gala." Beatrice's polished mask began to crack. Her hands trembled. "This is outrageous! Someone's trying to ruin me," she shouted, her voice breaking. "I love both my granddaughters equally." The reporter didn't flinch. "Then perhaps you'd like to explain this line," she said, reading from her phone. "Emma is sweet but simple, unlikely to amount to anything significant. Is that not your signature at the bottom?" Gasps filled the air. Emma's small face turned toward me, her brow furrowed in confusion and hurt. Beatrice looked around wildly, searching for someone to defend her. But Roger had disappeared behind the news van, avoiding her gaze. "This interview is over," Beatrice snapped, stepping backward. But her heel caught the edge of the driveway. She stumbled, arms flailing, and fell hard onto the concrete. Her purse opened, scattering its contents, lipstick, receipts, and a stack of folded papers that fluttered into the air like confetti. One landed at the reporter's feet. She picked it up, her eyes scanning the page. "Well," she said, glancing up, "this seems to confirm everything." Beatrice's face went white. The cameras kept rolling. The crowd whispered. Somewhere, a child laughed softly. The wrong kind of laughter. The nervous kind. Beatrice's perfect world had just crumbled in front of an audience. The reporter lowered her mic and turned to me quietly. "Mrs. Hartley, I think we've got what we need, she said, giving me a subtle nod before walking back to the van. The crew packed up and drove away, leaving Beatrice on the ground surrounded by the wreckage of her reputation. Roger helped her up, his face ashen, whispering something I couldn't hear. They left in silence, abandoning the Lincoln in our driveway. I stood there, holding Emma's hand, feeling her tiny fingers squeeze mine. Her voice was small but steady. Mom, did karma just happen? I looked down at her and said softly, Yes, sweetheart. Karma finally showed up. After the news van left, silence settled over the yard like a soft curtain after a storm. The air felt heavy, thick with everything that had just happened. The sun was beginning to dip behind the trees, casting long, golden light across the grass. Beatrice's Lincoln sat abandoned in the driveway, a monument to everything false and cruel. The party guests stood frozen for a moment, unsure what to do. Then Mrs. Peterson, who lived 2 houses down, quietly walked over to Emma. She kneeled, took off her own grandmother's old silver tiara from her hair, and gently placed it on her head. A princess deserves a crown on her birthday, she said, smiling softly. And not because of what she's done, sweetheart, but because of who she is. Emma blinked up at her, startled, and for the first time that day, her lips curved into a shy smile. Thank you, she whispered. The tension broke. It was like the entire neighborhood exhaled at once. Mr. Chen, whose son Timothy was in Emma's class, clapped his hands together. Okay, who wants a magic show? He called. He was a hobby magician and pulled a deck of cards from his pocket. The kids swarmed around him, cheering. Within minutes, the yard filled with laughter again, the sound of normalcy returning, of childhood being patched back together one giggle at a time. Dennis came up beside me, his hand resting gently on my back. You okay? He asked quietly. I nodded, watching Emma twirl in her purple dress under the string lights, her tiara catching the glow. She's smiling again, I said. That's all that matters. Roger called, Dennis said softly. He said Mom's shaken up. She's going to stay with him for a while. I said nothing. I didn't need to. Some consequences didn't require words. As the evening deepened, Mrs. Rodriguez, who had brought her famous empanadas earlier, taught the kids a birthday song from her childhood. It was lively, full of clapping and spinning, and by the time the final verse ended, Emma was laughing so hard she almost dropped her cupcake. The cake Beatrice had brought, the second one, was perfect this time. It said, Happy Birthday, Emma, in bright purple letters, surrounded by sugar unicorns and edible glitter. When I cut the first slice and handed it to Emma, she looked at it for a moment, then said, It's beautiful. But you know what, Mom? I kind of want to taste the other one, too. The one that said Meredith? I asked, surprised. She nodded, grinning mischievously. Yeah, just to see if it tastes any different. The parents laughed, and I felt something inside me unclench. We served both cakes that night, and Emma declared they tasted exactly the same. See, Mom, you were right. It's just a name on a cake. The yard glowed under the string lights. Fireflies blinked lazily in the distance. The children danced barefoot on the grass, chasing bubbles that floated through the warm summer air. By the time the last guest left, the world had gone quiet again. I found Emma sitting on the porch swing, her tiara slightly crooked, holding her unicorn plushie against her chest. You tired, birthday girl? I asked, sitting beside her. She shook her head. Just thinking. The chains creaked gently as we swayed. Why doesn't Grandma B love me like she loves Meredith? She asked, finally, her voice calm, almost curious. I took a deep breath, wrapping my arm around her shoulders. Sometimes, sweetheart, adults forget what love really means, I said softly. They start thinking it's something you earn, like points or trophies. They think love is about achievements or who's better at something. But real love isn't like that. It's something you give freely without keeping score. Emma nodded slowly, thinking it through. Mrs. Peterson said her grandma used to tell her that the best people are the ones who are kind when no one's keeping score. She's a wise woman, I said. You remember that, okay? Because that's who you are. Kind when no one's watching. That's what makes you special. Emma smiled faintly. Do you think Grandma will ever love me like that? Maybe one day, I said. But even if she doesn't, you'll be okay, because you know how to love people the right way. We sat in silence for a while, watching the fireflies begin their dance across the yard. Somewhere in the distance, a neighbor's wind chime sang a soft tune. For the first time all day, peace settled over me like a blanket. I looked at my daughter, the glow of the porch light reflecting in her hair, her eyes calm again. And I knew that whatever came next, she'd be stronger for it. Because love isn't measured by the people who failed to give it, it's defined by how we choose to give it anyway. That night, when I tucked her into bed, she whispered, Mom, I think maybe the worst thing ever turned into the best thing ever. I smiled and kissed her forehead. You're right, baby. 2 weeks passed before we heard from Beatrice again. No calls, no texts, not even a mention of the incident from Roger or his wife. It was as if the whole family had collectively decided to pretend the world had stopped turning on that humiliating afternoon. But one morning, as I was packing Emma's lunch for school, I heard the sound of the mailbox closing. On the porch lay a thick cream-colored envelope sealed with Beatrice's initials in gold. Her signature stationery. Her way of maintaining control even when apologizing. I picked it up, my hands tense, and carried it inside. Mom, who's it from? Emma asked, sipping her orange juice, her backpack already slung over one shoulder. It's from Grandma B, I said quietly. Emma's eyes widened, a mix of fear and curiosity flashing across her face. Is she mad? No, sweetheart, I said gently. I think this time she's sorry. Inside the envelope was a typed letter, perfectly worded, probably by a lawyer. Dear Victoria and Dennis, it began. I want to formally apologize for my actions at Emma's birthday party. I realize now that my words and behavior were deeply hurtful. I allowed my misguided views on achievement and worth to cloud my judgment. Please find enclosed the documents for Emma's irrevocable education trust, equivalent in amount and structure to Meredith's. I hope this can serve as both an apology and a promise that I will do better moving forward. Sincerely, Beatrice Hartley. Beneath the letter was a cashier's check and a notarized trust agreement. Legal, binding, real. For a long moment, I just stared at the papers. They didn't feel like forgiveness. They felt like restitution, a transaction, not redemption. But still, I felt something shift inside me. Not for Beatrice's sake, but for Emma's. Because no matter the motive, this was closure. What does it say? Emma asked softly. I folded the letter and smiled. It says Grandma's going to help pay for your college someday. Emma blinked. Even though she was mean? Maybe that's her way of making it right, I said. She nodded, then shrugged with that innocent acceptance children have when they decide not to carry someone else's mistakes. Okay, she said simply. Can I have another waffle? That afternoon, Roger came by to pick up his mother's car, which was still sitting lifeless in our driveway. He didn't ring the doorbell. He just slid an envelope under the mat and drove off. Inside was a check for $5,000 with Emma's birthday written in the memo line. It wasn't the $25,000 Beatrice had announced in front of the cameras, but it was something. And the gesture meant he understood. Later that evening, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. When I answered, I heard a small, shaky voice say, Aunt Victoria, it's Meredith. Hi, sweetheart, I said softly. Are you okay? She sniffled. Dad told me everything. I didn't know Grandma was doing that. I swear I didn't. My chest tightened. I know, honey. None of this was your fault. Emma didn't deserve that. She's my cousin. We're supposed to be a team. I smiled through my own tears. She knows that now. I told Grandma I don't want her money. I told her if she can't love us both the same, then she doesn't get to pick. And I quit student council. I can't talk about kindness when my family's acting like that." Her voice broke. "I'm sorry, Aunt Victoria." "You don't have to be sorry, sweetheart. You're doing the right thing. I'm proud of you." That night, Emma got her first call from Meredith. They talked for nearly an hour about school, their favorite shows, and even made plans for a sleepover. From that day on, they started texting every week, sending each other memes, jokes, and pictures of their pets. Slowly, a new bond formed, one built not on competition, but connection. Beatrice still sends holiday cards now, always addressed correctly, always with equal gifts for both girls. But she hasn't been back to our house since. Maybe she's too ashamed. Maybe she's just afraid of facing the version of herself she saw that day on camera. Either way, it doesn't matter. Because something bigger came out of all of this. Something real. Emma learned that day that standing up for yourself doesn't always mean shouting. Sometimes it means holding your ground with quiet strength. It means refusing to let someone else's cruelty define your worth. It learned that love isn't earned through perfection, grades, or gold stars. It's earned by kindness, by the way you treat people when no one's keeping score. A few days ago, I found the unicorn cake topper from that fateful day sitting on her bookshelf beside Mrs. Peterson's silver tiara. When I asked why she kept it, she smiled and said, "Because it reminds me that even bad things can turn into good ones." I stared at her for a moment, realizing how much she'd grown in just a few weeks. My little girl, the one who once asked if she was enough, had become someone who already knew she was. And maybe, in a strange way, that was the greatest gift Beatrice ever gave her. The cake that was supposed to humiliate her ended up teaching her what real worth looks like. So yes, maybe it did go viral. Maybe people whispered. Maybe they laughed. Maybe they judged. But the truth is, karma didn't just visit Beatrice that day. It visited everyone who watched and learned that cruelty, no matter how neatly it's wrapped in pearls and smiles, always leaves a stain. And sometimes the only way to wash it away is with truth.